And now, the survival show that once survived, watching the news media freak out that their president might be a Russian sleeper agent or moon baby. In this episode, we sit down with Ross Powell of Survival 401k. He's going to share with us a way to reduce your tax burden and buy some survival toys all at the same time. Howdy and welcome to the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 268. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Before we get started today, you are about to listen to two guys on the internet talk about money. So here's your big warning. Do your own homework. Invest in things at your own risk. I'm not giving you financial advice. I am not responsible for the shenanigans you get up to. In fact, I might not even be wearing pants today. Again, guy on the internet talking about stuff. You've been warned. Now with that super airtight legal disclaimer, Ross, welcome to In the Rabbit Hole.
Hey Aaron, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so let's start here. Who are you? What are we doing today? What are we doing?
Well, I'm here. I'm Ross Powell. I'm here in San Antonio, Texas, and I'm here to talk about pre-tax prepping and how you can utilize your 401k and your IRAs to finish out your preps, but also to diversify your retirement funds into a broader array of products and services.
So now, when we spoke earlier, you said like a lot of this is centered around a solo 401k. I'm not a big market guy, so I have no idea what this is. But apparently, I'm not alone. Like this is something that is most people don't know what a solo 401k is. Can you kind of explain what it is and what the difference between this and a normal 401k is?
Sure. I mean, a solo 401k was created back in 2002, and to your point, only about 2% of our population in the United States knows anything about it. And the reason for that is if you can control your own money and you make the decisions, whether it's in the market or out of the market, what does that do to the financial services industry? It cuts them out, right? So they don't want to publicize it. And so what our solo 401k does, you have the ability to be inside Wall Street if you would if you're so inclined. I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's rigged. But you can also get into real estate, rental properties, personal loans, tax liens, rural land, commercial properties, gold, silver, guns, ammo. Anything that has a fair market value is investable with your solo 401k, with the exception of collectibles such as a Ming vase, a Rembrandt, a Picasso, rare coins, rare wine, antique car, all the stuff that's subjective, even though it has intrinsic value. One man's gold is another man's shizer, right? So you have to decide that's all subjective. So you have to have something that has a fair market value that's apples to apples. Because I can't compare a Rembrandt to a Picasso, for instance, right? Okay. So it's all in the eyes of the beholder. So collectibles are off limits, but everything else is pretty much only limited by your imagination of what you can get into.
So you brought up an interesting point a minute ago about pre-tax. What kind of walk us through that a little bit deeper?
Sure. So when your 401k money, generally, or your IRA money comes, unless it's a Roth, comes to your account, if it's your current employer or previous employer, came through pre-tax, meaning you didn't pay income tax on it. You probably paid FICA on it, but you did not pay federal or state income tax on it. So that money is pre-tax. So now you can utilize your 401k money to buy your preparations, and whether that's rural land to build your retreat on, or whether it's for weapons and ammo or something of that line, you're using pre-tax money to do that. It's a direct investment. Whereas if you took your 20% or 25% out of that money, then you would have a lot less to utilize for that same prepping. So your W-2 wages would be what you use normally for your prepping. In this case, it's pre-tax, so it gives you more money to utilize, and it provides you the ability. Now, there is going to come a time when you reach 70 years and a half that you're going to have to take your required minimum distribution, and then you'll pay tax on it then. But generally, most people have a lower tax rate, so when that comes up, it goes on your 1040. Your taxable or your tax band or your tax threshold is going to be less than if you're making $100,000 a year right now.
So does this have to be on, so we covered land, and land would make sense for doing something like this. Or if somebody was big into precious metals, like that would make sense to me too. What are some of the unusual things that somebody could use this for? Because I know we talked about like, well, I don't imagine many people are buying Rembrandts for their prepping purposes, but
Well, no, 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 no.
yeah.
But there's other things you can utilize. I mean, again, you can build a cabin on that same property and use it and rent it out as a deer hunter's place or
Mm,
hunting cabin and make income, and all the income you make off of it comes back to your plan tax deferred. You can get into tax liens and loan money for them to pay their taxes. And if they don't pay their taxes, then you can foreclose on their property if they don't have another lien on it.
mm,
You can do private loans. There's a lot of ability to make hard money loans to people that have good solid collateral. You make 12%. You can do rental properties, again, which is a great investment because you probably make in Austin, especially for where you're located, in San Antonio, the rental market is hot.
mhm,
So investors are making 14, 15% net on their investment. And if they paid cash for the property, then they own the underlying asset. So in a situation where you needed to bug out, you may have another house that's empty that you could go to.
mhm.
So it provides a lot of different things for you, plus a great income stream. I mean, I have customers that have bought water trucks that service California fires, Oregon, and Washington, and they're making $1,500 to $2,000 a day delivering water. They're not personal; they hire a driver to do that, but they're making a ton of money during the fire season.
Mhm.
Another person bought an 18 wheeler for a friend of his to drive, and he's making a ton of money with his 401k with that as well. So everything's coming back tax deferred. So again, if you know some particular business and you know how to I don't want to use the word exploit, but you know how to maximize it, then what's to keep your 401k from investing in that.
Mhm. So how does this work? Like, walk us through the initial process. And why don't we use a fun one since we're talking about prepping a piece of land and a cabin on it. Like, how would this work exactly?
Sure. So let's say that you come to me and I say I have $100,000 in my legacy 401k at I don't know at Wells Fargo. I used to work at Wells Fargo, whatever.
Hmm.
And so we open up an account. You have to have a small business. That's one of the key caveats. You have to have some form or fashion of self-employment. Excuse me. Which I would recommend for everybody to have to have their own business. Number one, for the tax advantages, but number two, you can't always depend on your day job. You may come to a time you walk in and they say "Vaya con Dios" because your job is now overseas.
Hmm.
So you need to have a second income stream always, not well, number one, to increase your savings and things of that nature, but also something to fall back on. So if you have this small business, then it can sponsor one of these plans. Then we roll your $100,000 from Fidelity into this plan. You find 5 acres, 10 acres, whatever it is, 20 acres, wherever you're located, and you title that property. And let's say you pay 50 for that. And so that gets titled under your 401k plan. Let's just call it Aaron's Enterprises 401k PSP.
Hmm.
And Aaron's Enterprises 401k PSP purchases that 10 acres out in the sticks, and it gets titled as that. Aaron, under the owner is Aaron's Enterprises 401k PSP. It's registered with the county, so now you own it. Now you can go and buy a prefab cabin if you want to, have that delivered, paid cash for by your 401k. It sits on your property, you outfit it, you buy, beds, whatever, and you're good to go. Now you can lease it out as again a hunter's cabin and do hunting on it if you want to, or it can be your bug out location. The only caveat is you can't go and spend a lot of time there because that would be self-dealing and a prohibitive transaction. However,
Hmm.
if you're the trustee, you have to make sure that there are no squatters, there's no people that are living on it, there's no infestations, the fencing is good. So every month or every 2 months, you can go and walk the perimeter and make sure everything is secure, make sure there's no holes in the roof, make sure there's no water leaking or anything else like that, so that you can again you can visit it. You just can't spend any extended time on it. Now, let's say there is a conflagration and you need to use this particular cabin, so you can do that and you stay on a length of time that would be considered a distribution. So you would at some point have to take the tax hit on that. The question is, where would you send it to if the government's is out of service?
Mm.
So once the government stands back up again, then you would submit your taxes and your distribution. You would pay the tax on whatever part of it that you use. Again, this includes storable foods and things of that nature. That not the kind that you buy at Costco necessarily, but the packaged stuff that comes in tubs and it's from a commercial dealer. That makes sense?
That makes sense. So like the Wise food storage stuff, are we talking about?
Right. Right. Simply clean foods, things like that
Okay.
that are already prepackaged and are in tubs, so that you crack it open and you eat whatever. Let's say you have to eat 10 meals or whatever, then that would become part of your distribution.
Uh-huh. So I guess as far as if somebody was buying a vacation property for themselves, and the second usage, we'll say, was a bug out location, like this, they would still run into a little bit of problems because they would run into the tax problems because they're using the property and it's a distribution. So in that sense, does that help? I mean, so does this still work very well for that situation, or is this strictly you're going to buy a piece of property or something like that, you build a cabin on it, and then you're going to use it as a hunting lease or something, or rent it out as a hunting lease and
Right.
make money on it, and then you're deferring the taxes to later. Am I following this correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. Correct. Now
Okay.
you can build a house for a vacation, or you can use it. You can buy houses or build a house for a VRBO or home away, and your 401k owns the vacation rental, and all those income that comes back off of that goes and becomes part of your 401k tax deferred income.
Okay. Could you rent it from your own entity?
That would be in a gray area that I probably wouldn't want to step into those waters on. Can you get away with it? Probably yes. I mean, the chances of you being audited are minimal, but I don't want to take that chance because
Right.
they can invalidate that piece of your 401k and you pay all the tax right up front. Now, the
Mhm.
beauty of the 401k versus an IRA, for instance, if you do a prohibitive transaction in an IRA, they will invalidate the entire IRA and you pay tax on that. Let's say you have $600,000, they invalidate the whole thing. If you have $600,000 in the 401k and you have some in metals and some in land and some in this particular property we're talking about, the only thing you're going to get penalized on is that one stovepipe. They're not going to invalidate the entire portfolio.
Mhm.
So that's the beauty of each investment is stovepipe, so that if you make a mistake in one place, it doesn't invalidate the entire equation.
Let's take a quick break for this vital message. Listener, do you get at least $3 a month worth of value out of I2H? You should see what we do for the Roving Horde Armada members. Check it out today by visiting I2H.net. Members receive access to the private I2H Armada Slack group where they get to connect, ask questions, get the news, escape the nonsense in their social media feeds, and shenanigans. Twice a month, members get together on a private virtual roundtable. We discuss guns, meat, news that matters, and other things you just can't talk about with anybody else. Access to members-only content and every episode ever produced. And that's just to name a few things you get with your membership when you sign up through I2H.net. In the Rabbit Hole is mostly kept on the air and supported by members just like you. Go to I2H.net to find out more and become part of the Roving Horde Armada. Now, back to today's guest. So does this lower taxes overall, or does this just defer them to later? Like you're going to pay the piper at some point. It's just when do you want to pay it?
Well, let's say that you're making $200,000 a year now, and you're paying in the 30, probably with the new tax law, you're probably in the 30, mid 30 range on your effective tax rate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say you retire and you're in your 60s and you're making $40,000 a year on Social Security, your effective tax rate's probably going to be in the 15% range, right? So when you start taking distributions, your effective tax rate at the time of your retirement is what you're going to pay the tax on, not what you paid for it at.
Okay. Okay. That makes a little more sense. Okay. All right. What so how does it work? That's wild that you could actually buy like store long-term storage foods and stuff. I guess you could buy, and I think you even said it, like you could buy guns and stuff in this trust, not in a trust, in this.
Right. Actually, you can buy NFA items that really gain in value. So
Hmm.
if you wanted to buy a machine gun, a fully automatic machine gun for $25,000 or whatever it
Hmm.
costs you because they're not cheap, an
Right.
SBR or something, then it's in the name of the 401k. And if it doubles in value, you sell it in 2 years and you double your money, then that money comes back tax deferred.
Hmm. Okay, so in a way, it works kind of like a trust.
Essentially, yes.
Okay. What?
There's a trust component built into this because you are a trustee. So there is a trust built into the documentation.
Okay. Okay. So what are some of the unusual ways you've seen people or that you've even helped people use this for particularly for prepping?
So and again, let's see. General, I'm trying to think what are some of the more unique ones. People building. You've heard of a mutual assistance group, right? MAGs.
Mhm. Mhm.
So people will use that to. We've had several people work together to buy a property in a collective group, and they use their 401k money to be part of the MAG and put their money in for the MAG. So that's been a pretty creative way to do that.
Mhm.
And so their particular membership is under the 401k name, and them being the trustees, then they can, if the time comes, then they would utilize it under their as trustees. But then again, when the fertilizer hits the oscillator, then they would have to again take that distribution.
Mhm. Okay. And then the name of the game is going back to trying to put off that distribution as long as possible so that you're under a lower tax rate later.
Right, correct.
Okay. So how is what are some other examples of people using this and using it, I would guess, successfully?
I think I mentioned the water trucks. I mentioned
Mhm.
that there's a lot of people doing real estate. I
Mhm.
have people that have done very, very well with rental properties and vacation homes and things like that, uh, where they buy a condo and lease it to their niece or nephew. This is a real kind of a fine line here. You can buy a rental property, say for a college student, and but it can't be your ascendant or descendant, meaning you can't buy something for your grandparents to put them into or your parents or your children. However, it doesn't prohibit your uncles, aunts, not nieces, nephews, and things of that nature. Right. So I've had customers buy a condo in a university town or a small house, and their niece and nephew rented it from them at a standard rate. So so that's perfectly fine. And then
Mhm.
when the student graduated, they sold it and made a very nice profit for the 401k.
Okay. Okay. And then and all of the proceeds then end up going back into the 401k where they live until you have to take a distribution.
Right, right. Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, another thing people do is you can borrow. One thing we haven't talked about is that you can borrow up to 50% of the value and loan it to yourself. The current rate is at 3.25%.
Mhm.
So you can use it. So if you have $100,000, you can borrow up to 50, and you can use that for anything you want. You want to buy a car, start a business, doesn't matter. You have 5 years to repay that. But
Okay.
let's say that you want to put a new kitchen in your house or redo your bathroom, then you can borrow the money, and that's considered a home improvement loan, and you can amortize that up to 15 years. Or you can use it as a down payment on a new home, and you amortize that and be almost like a second mortgage, but you amortize that over 15 years as well at three
Okay.
and a quarter percent,
And then you're
which
paying
today's
yourself
money
back and
is cheap, right?
uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah. That's interesting. So and I guess in that way it works almost like using a whole life insurance policy in a way where you're borrowing from yourself and paying back
Right, like
and all
bank on
that.
yourself. It's very similar, yeah.
Okay. Why and we touched on this a little while ago. Why isn't I mean this is a pretty interesting financial vehicle or tool. Why is it that more people don't aren't aware of this? Because until you said something about it to me, I was like, I hadn't heard of this before. I mean, again, I'm not that literate in that area, but this is actually kind of interesting. And this, so why is it more people don't already know about this?
Because it's not publicized. You wouldn't even know it unless I was telling you about it because the financial industry does not make any money at it,
Hmm.
right? So if they're not making money at it, why would they want to publicize that? Because they lose money because they make money by you putting all your money in the market. And the fact that our solo K, you can open a brokerage account and day trade, you can do cryptocurrencies and things of that nature. So
Hmm.
you can put 401k money into Coinbase or Kraken or any of these other cryptocurrency. You can do all of that. So they don't want you to be. They want you inside their walls. So this allows you to get outside what I call the matrix of Wall Street, and you can
Hmm.
actually do your own thing. And so it's all part of the red pill process of you getting out of the matrix and doing your own thing and recognizing that you're not as dumb as most financial advisors tell you you are.
Hmm.
So once people start understanding how things work, they say, well, I can do this. And once they start seeing the revenue streams that they get from this and doing it themselves, and they don't pay all those fees, It's amazing what the cost of the 1 or 2 or 3% a year you get charged in your portfolio, what adds up over the course of time, which you would have had you compounded that 1, 2, or 3%.
Hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, there's nothing in it for them, so why promote it? So
Right.
how did you get into this?
It's interesting. I left a company, Hartford Insurance, many years ago. And they just out of the blue sent me a lump sum request for my pension. I had 11 years with them, and they said, "You want to?" They were trying to buy me out, and they reduced their overall pension costs long term, and they used some pretty high return rates to calculate. So it was really unrealistic. However, they offered me X dollars, and I said, "Well, looking at my family history, not to be cynical, but my mother died at 48, and my father Betty died at 80, but other cousins and sisters and things have died in their late 50s and early 60s." So I said, "Well, my genetics aren't the best, so I'll take the money now. Not to be cynical, but
Right.
I'll take the money now." So I was like, "Well, I have a choice of taking the 20% hit and more penalty tax, or do I find a place where I can roll this?" And so I did a lot of research, and I found a company that did the solo 401k. And after we did the transaction, and I was able to use that money to buy some property and put a cabin on it. I mean, I eat my own soup. I have one of these, and I did the same thing we're talking about. I have some property in a cabin and all that kind of stuff outfitted. I don't. I rarely ever go there because it's pretty remote, and I know it's pretty secure.
Mm.
But I go there once a quarter or every 6 months or something. So, but at the end of the day, I said, you know what? This is a perfect vehicle for preppers. And at that time, this was probably 2000 and we started the company in 14, so that'd be 2013, 14. And I said, well, this would be a great business for preppers. And so I just started making some talking to people and in the alternative media, and they loved the idea. So I got on some shows, and it just exploded. And so I was still doing my day job at a bank, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm getting overwhelmed with calls, and I can't do my day job. So I ended up quitting as I was a vice president, making a very nice six-figure salary,
Mm.
and said, I'm just going to go do this thing. And my wife Jill, who
Hmm.
encouraged me to jump out of the nest and take the chance. And it's the rest is history. We're going on our fourth year, and we're very excited, continue to grow, and we have over 400 clients now.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fun to hear. That sounds like a fun ride.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride. Sometimes it's pretty busy.
Yeah, yeah. So now you yourself are a prepper too. Like this wasn't just like a niche that you were like, hey, these prepper people are ripe for
Right, let's
doing
go
business
fleece
with.
the sheep. No, I have my own retreat property from this. I
Hmm.
have my own storable food. I mean, I have everything all prepped up. And the one thing I'm probably lacking is in training or physical fitness or some other things that I'm working on. Like
Hmm.
we talked about before the show,
Yeah.
I take firearms training, private firearms trainer. I use the gear not the gear that I bought with my 401k, but with cash. So, but I have the exact same weapons in my 401k stash of guns as I'm using that I'm training with.
Hmm.
So in the event that that one jams up, this next AR-15, I just take a distribution on it, right? So
Yeah.
when the time comes, if I'm assuming I'm still alive.
Right. You're very pessimistic about this lifespan thing. So, which is funny for a prepper, but the irony of it. So, but just as a fun side note, so what's your prepper jam? Like, what gets you worked up? What got you into this?
I just think seeing that again, being in banking and during 2008, I worked for a bank that was at the tip of the spear of the failure.
Uh huh.
I worked and did a lot of research. I was a process engineer, and so I did a lot of research and forensic, background looking at things. And I found smoking guns within that bank that they were saying these bonds, these CDOs were A+ bonds, and you go and look at the mortgages on them, they were C and D.
Hmm.
So you could see the fraud in it. I showed it to my boss, and he was like, "Oh, there it is." So and the way I got to it is our call volumes in our mortgage business were going through the roof. Like, what's driving that call volume? And go back to see that everybody's were getting foreclosed on, or they're delinquent in these liar loans, we call
Hmm.
them, right? These ninja loans, no
Hmm.
income, no, all that kind of stuff. So you see it. So that's what brought me into prepping. And I listened to people like Doug Hagman and Steve Quayle for a long time, and so I just kind of got into recognizing. And I'm a Navy intelligence officer in the past, so you see one trend line, that just a dead reckoning line. You see two, you have an X. You three, four, five, six. Now you got a pinpoint, probably location of or something. So you do the same thing with news, and it paints a tapestry of what's going on.
Hmm.
And that's what really drove me into it.
And I've actually, there are a lot of, I would say that they tend to be more often than not closet preppers, I call them, that came out of the financial industry. And a lot of them are still in it to some degree or another, but that they really came to prepping from being in the belly of the beast, so to speak, and then got
Right.
into prepping. Well, that's pretty interesting. So, we've talked about it a few times, but you have a company that does this and you have a background in doing this. And so tell us a little bit about the company. Like what is this? I guess what is the name? It's what Survival 401k is the name of your company?
Right. Survival 401k, and you can see us at survival401k.com.
Hmm.
Yes, sir.
So what is the service like? Like what walk me through the process. Somebody calls you up, they say, they listen to this show, they say, "This Ross Powell, he's my brand of wacky. I'm into this kind of thing."
That's me.
What
Right. Right.
what is the process like? Like once somebody contacts you, like what do you do? How long does it take? What is this like?
Well, I first ask them to remove their tinfoil hat before they call me because it causes interference on the phone.
Right,
Right.
right.
So but just give us a call. It's a free 30-minute consultation. I ask you what your aspirations are, why you're doing it, where your money's located, how much you have, what your age is, and really where you want to go, and what do you really want to do with this money.
Mhm.
And then we talk through there's a self we talked about already, a self-employment component. Ask them if they have that. If they don't, I said, we figure out a way for them to make money. And I have customers that started small business, something as simple as building birdhouses in the garage and
Mm.
selling them on eBay, or they do consulting, or they do multi-level marketing things. We find out where they are, where they want to go, what their risk tolerance is. I describe what all the different products are, and then they decide to move forward. And if they decide to move forward, we have a secure form application on our website at survival401k.com. You click on that, you put in your information, and I walk them through that. Their name, their personal name, the company name that they're going to use or they have already, who their participants are, who their trustees are going to be. They submit their app, and then about 3 days later, we ship them a 200-page customized binder with 200 pages of glorious legal prose, right? And so that comes to them. Then we set up a 30-minute to an hour appointment to go through that binder, get the specific signatures that they need to complete this, and then from there, they go to their local bank, open up a bank account under the name of the 401k, because we'll have an EIN, an employee identification number for their small business. They don't already have one, and then one from the 401k. And the 401k has its own employee identification number and all the documentation. You take it to your local bank, they open up the business account, then you transfer the money, say from Fidelity or T. Rowe Price or whoever. It goes into that bank account, and then that client has access to their money via checkbook, wire transfer, ACH, and debit card.
Mm.
So you can buy all these things and do the stuff with that way. So generally, you'll wire money for closing on a piece of real estate. You want to buy a weapon, or you want to do that, chances are you're going to use a debit card or ACH, depending on who you buy it from. You buy a custom weapon, obviously you'll use a check or something like that.
Mhm.
But all of it has to be receipts under the 401k name. We give you a customized spreadsheet, and so you can track all your investments, because every year you have to do an annual valuation of the price and the value. And if you're under $250,000 in your total value, then you have no reporting to the IRS. 250,001, you have to do a form 5500 EZ the following July. So if you did it this year and you had $250,001, then next July, but July 31st, you have to fill out this 2-page form, which will help you do. Very simple to complete.
Okay.
So once we have that and the money's moved over, I'll have another 30-minute or an hour discussion with you, describing where you need to put your money, not what you need to put it in, but the three buckets, which are wealth preservation, which is protection of your capital, of your principal, you don't lose it. The
Mhm.
second one is growth and income, so you can grow your money beyond inflation, and whether you want monthly income, and that depends on your age. And if you're over 200, up to 59 and a half, you can take income off your 401k without paying that 10% penalty.
Hmm.
It just goes against your taxable income.
Mhm.
Or then you need to have liquidity so that you can have access to that money in the event of a catastrophe. You can borrow money, say for a surgery or for whatever.
Mhm.
So you suddenly have an illness or some kind of emergency, your car breaks down, you can borrow money to cover that loss and then pay it back later.
I
So
got it.
they're just
Okay.
going to get inside their heads and where they want to go,
Uh-huh.
and that's not where it ends. So they have unlimited phone conversation with me. If you buy a piece of property, I'll help make sure it's titled correctly. I'll work with your title company. If you need an attorney or an accountant to help you with your taxes, we have vetted people for that as well that we'll send you over to.
Oh,
So it's
very
a complete 360
Yeah.
holistic view.
Okay. So what was the website address one more time?
Sure, it's survival401k.com. And there's a contact page on there, or you can call us at 844-650-5733.
Well, awesome. Well, Ross, thank you for coming on today and sharing this with us. It's pretty neat. Thank you for letting us know about it.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's been great. I love talking about this because I'm very passionate about it, if you can't tell.
Yeah. Show notes, links to Ross, and other resources can be found by going to intherabbithole.com/E268. Get more survival goodness and help support the show. Visit itrh.net to become part of the Roving Horde Armada. It's members just like you who help keep the lights on. Again, visit itrh.net. If you're watching this on YouTube, do all the YouTube stuff. Like this video, subscribe, and slap that bell around because bananas are yellow. With that, we wrap up episode number 268 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.
West.